Welcome back to another segment of The Buzz. Today in our community segment, we have two special guests with us here to tell us about a revolutionary ferry that you may have known about already, but you may not have known the impact that it's having in Northeast Florida. Thank you both for joining us today on The Buzz.
So thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
Now, Rich, we're talking offset about the rich history of the ferry. For those of us who may have just relocated to Northeast Florida or who have not had the luxury of just experiencing our fine waterways, can you share with us a brief history of it and just the impact it continues to have in Northeast Florida?
Sure, be happy to. The recorded history will tell you that back in the late 1800s, the flatbed boats of farmers were moving things across the river. But more recently, the Florida Department of Transportation saw the need for a transportation link on State Road A1A to cross that river from the north to the south side. And it created the St. Johns River Ferry and managed it for 40 plus years. And there were subsequent owners to that ferry, the city of Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Port Authority, and now, thankfully, the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. So that is the quick and simple history.
Great, Leigh. Why did everybody at JTA say this is a project that we want to get involved in? I know you shared the amount of funds that have been just injected into this project, which is phenomenal. Can you share with our audience why JTA wanted to get involved?
Yeah, first of all, we took over ownership and operations of the ferry in March of 2016. At the time, it was being operated by the St. Johns River Ferry Commission with the city of Jacksonville. And we felt that it was just going to be the perfect fit into our existing transit service platform. You know, we provide public bus service, we run the Skyway downtown, we have paratransit service, we offer Game Day Express. And so it was just a nice fit for us to be able to have transit as, or the ferry as part of our transit services. And, you know, already knowing how to operate transit services, being able to have the ferry now operated under our transit operations division has just really been able to let the ridership grow immensely. So we took over the ferry in March of 2016, and we were lucky to receive some wonderful grant funding from the Federal Transit Administration. In fact, in 2016, we got a $6 million grant, and just a month and a half ago, we got a $3.35 million grant from the Federal Transit Administration. And those grant funds are used to enhance the ferry itself, to do infrastructure improvements. One of the first things we did, and we're phasing it, the infrastructure improvements, is replacing what we call the slip walls. So we've done slip wall improvements, we've done the seawall improvements, and one of the things that we're doing later this year, in fact in September, is going to be replacing the terminal bridges. Those are the bridges that connect the land to the ferry vessel itself. And we have to replace those on both sides of the river, on the Mayport side and on the Fort George side. And so all of this funding helps to be able to do those improvements that had been many years, decades since these type of improvements were made. So it will make sure or ensure that the ferry and the infrastructure itself is around for many years. We're also, as required by the Coast Guard, we have to take the ferry out of service twice in a 5-year period for what we call a major overhaul. So think of it as taking your vehicle in for that major 60,000 mile service. But on a vessel, a ferry vessel, it's going to take much longer. You can't drop it off for a day or two. It's going to be weeks. So when we replace those bridges, we have to obviously take the boat out of service because you can't drive on them when there's no bridge there. So when that vessel's out of service, we're going to go ahead and send it to dry dock and let it go ahead and get that repowering, as we call it, where they overhaul the engine, where they, you know, scrub the vessel and repaint it. They take care of all of that stuff while it's in dry dock. And so that'll happen a day after Labor Day. And then we'll have the vessel coming back in service with new bridges at the end of October.
Phenomenal. For someone who hasn't had the opportunity to experience the ferry, can you share with us what the experience means to you?
Oh, I think of value in terms of experience when it comes to the ferry. The Friends of the St. Johns River Ferry really advocates and promotes ridership on the ferry. And we have finally a very good relationship with the Jacksonville Transit Authority. They're investing in the ferry, they're growing it, they're building business. So when you take the ferry, you're going across roughly a 1 mile crossing of the St. Johns River. Oftentimes when you're on that ferry, you may see some dolphins floating, you'll see boats going by. You may even have to stop for a moment and watch a huge freighter or tanker come down or up or down the river as the river pilots bring them up. But it's more of what it takes you to. I mean, this ferry takes you to beautiful things on both sides of the river. There are historic markers, historic points. There are national parks, there's state parks, there's city parks. And and there's also employers that employees need to get to across the river. So it's the value of that ferry. And what many people don't know is there can't be any other crossing than the ferry at that river point. People say, well, why do we need it? Why don't we just build a bridge? Two major reasons we can't build a bridge. Mayport Naval Station has an airfield, and the bridge would be an obstruction to that airfield. And secondarily, would create significant damage to the marshlands in terms of the on-ramps and off-ramps. So it's a beautiful piece of real estate. The ferry leads you and takes you to very interesting and beautiful places for many activities. So.
Absolutely, and a phenomenal partnership it is. Over 1 million riders you were sharing with us.
Yes, since we took over operations, we've had close to 1 million passenger trips.
Wow, so impressive. How can people learn more about this?
Well, to learn more about the ferry, when it operates, the schedule and the fares, they can go to jtafla.com. That's our website. And they can click on the ferry tab and it'll provide them with all the information. They can also follow us on social media. And if they have questions, they can call customer service at 630-3100. That's our customer contact center.
Phenomenal. Thank you both for joining us. Did you have some contact information?
One other thing to how you can contact the Friends of the St. Johns River Ferry, which is the nonprofit advocacy group. We have an ambassador program for volunteers, and to contact or get information on us, you could go to our website, www.friendsoftheferry.com, and follow us on social media as well on our Facebook page, and learn about the history of that ferry and also the opportunities that it presents along the coastline. State Road A1A most recently was designated by the Florida Department of Transportation as a scenic highway. A1A, Ocean Islands trails, and there is much on those trails to enjoy.
Well, absolutely. A lot of different ways to get in contact with you both. Thank you both for joining us today on The Buzz.
Thank you so much for having us.
For another segment of our community segment, I'm Jeff Shuford, your host. We look forward to seeing you on the ferry and in the next segment.